Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque. Join our Discord channel to chat with our hosts, ask questions, customize live stream alerts, and more. Visit securityweekly.com/Discord to receive an invite. We had some great comments from the last segment in there, by the way, about giving back and continuing education unit. So I've been monitoring Discord for that last segment. All right, Jason, articles for the week. There's 7 in here, but there's only 2 of us, so we should be able to hammer these out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I heard you. What'd you say?
No, I said absolutely. We should be able to get through these very effectively.
Yeah, there's these really interesting articles after some of the SEC announcements last week, right, around the CISO and communications, which we cover. We've covered these every week, and we've been covering these for years, right? It's interesting to see how these articles kind of morph and change based on the latest news that comes out. This first one's really around engaging the C-suite and the board, and there's going to be some other interesting ones from a communication perspective as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, this first one, I mean, we can start with the positive. There's a couple of items in here that I don't fully agree with, and I think could have a little bit better strategy around it, but the points of engaging the board, make sure you're building trust and confidence. We talk about it a lot on the show. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. And if you want to have the respect of the board and have them be confident in what you're bringing to the table, you have to build that trust over time. And then, the way you communicate is essential. So making sure you're quick and concise and giving them, really actionable updates to make sure that they know the level of risk to the organization and communicate in business terms is huge, right? I mean, you have to be aligning that risk to the business goals, the business, what motivates the business, and make sure you're speaking the language of the business. Now, to move on to the points that I think could have been thought through a little bit better. The number one item in here was seeking out latest and greatest technologies. At the end of the day, when you're talking to your colleagues at the C-level in the board of directors, I equate it to building the house. Do I really need to know that someone's using a hammer versus a nail gun? Probably not, right? So at the end of the day, knowing that you're keeping up to speed to latest, greatest technology is okay, but it's not going to be the motivation of the board when you sit at the table. They're going to want to know how you're mitigating risk, how you're moving the business forward, and really allowing that business to operate because you're putting cybersecurity at the forefront of that conversation. The other piece was knowing when to say yes. I think that's backwards. Yeah. I think, we're stuck in that no culture where it's knowing what hill you want to die on and say no. Because I've always said you can have conversations and strategies with the C-level peers in your organization, and they may want to get to a certain outcome, but you tell them that, you want to know what, right now, the best way to drive from Rhode Island to Boston isn't Route 95. We have to take 295 because here are all the risks that are presented going up Route 95. But we are going to get you to that outcome that you're looking to achieve, right? So, I think it's just the wrong standpoint to say knowing when to say yes. It's backwards.
Yeah. The technology one's the one that really stuck out to me. See, we've been trying to move beyond the technologist role as a CISO, right? If technology solved all the issues, we would be out of jobs. Like it's not about the technology sometimes. We have people and process that also have to be managed. But for some reason, everybody wants to go to the technology piece. Like, no, like let's think about the people and the process and all the other things. So to your point, risk is way broader than just technology discussions.
Yeah. The tools can be discussed afterwards, right? The tools that are going to be used, the investment that's going to be needed, things of that nature can be spoken about at the end. And to be honest with you, it's probably not even a board conversation. They're going to want to know the overall investment, but that's pretty much it, even
Right.
if that. So at the end of the day, the latest technologies, I don't think is that level of a conversation.
Yeah, because the board's going to ask, okay, how much is it going to cost me, and what am I going to get in return? Like,
that's right.
They're going to equate
100%.
it back to dollars at the end of the day.
You got it. Yeah, and then
That's how
that
they think.
aligning, that engaging the C-suite section too, spoke about the true name of the game is conveying the implications of inaction and trying to get back to outcomes. You want to know what? I think we need to mature the conversation a little bit more than that as well, and talk about the benefits of the action. Right? Here are the benefits of the action we're going to take. Here's the risk of inaction. So it's taking it to that next level where you can start talking about how it's going to positively affect the organization. And we need to be speaking in terms of business. We're going to get to it in another article. We need to be saying terms like revenue and margin and EBITDA and how we're going to be affecting those type of conversations and business strategies.
Yep. Yeah. And back to the second point you brought up, which is about knowing to say yes. We should be figuring out how to say yes all the time.
Yes.
Now, there are certain cases where you probably want to say no, but you're there as a business enabler. Right? If you are truly trying to align to the business, you want to try to get to a yes answer, don't you?
Well, 100%, because otherwise the train is going to hit you, right? That train's going to leave the station for the benefit of the business, and you can be an impediment and you could be a little bit of a roadblock, but that train's going to ride right through you unless you're part of that strategy to get them to success and move the needle that they're looking to move. So better off being part of the strategy, help design the strategy and getting to that outcome, than being bowled over and forgotten about. That's how you lose confidence. That's how you lose that trust, is becoming that impediment, right? And again, it's refocusing on what is the outcome you're trying to achieve, and let's find the best, most secure way to get you there.
Right. Which leads in a little bit to the second article, like how do you have these risk-based communications and conversations, right? This is one of the Gartner analysts wrote this piece, which again, right, we have to be able to this is a lot of what we do is storytelling, I think, right? Every time you get into these conversations, you're like, well, let me give you some examples. Let me tell you what the story, because it's so important to relate it to things they understand. It's not typically a deep dive technical conversation. It is truly about how this will impact business. So use stories that relate to the audience, which I think is so important and something we forget about sometimes.
100%. It's that selfless perspective versus selfish perspective. You're going in to educate the folks in that room. You're in there to serve the folks in that room. So being able to explain and outline the risk and the objectives around why you're having this conversation in their terms so they can fully understand it and wrap their head around it and support it is critical. So you have to really tailor the conversation to the audience in that room, and it's going to be a business conversation at the end of the day. They're not going to want to hear it. You'll lose them at the bits and the bytes and the technologies like we talked about in the previous article. You will lose them, right? So you have to be able to have that business conversation. And to step two, the point of step two, you have to bring your A game to the conversation. I always call it bringing your A game, but they labeled it earn the right to be heard, and really demonstrate that you're committed to getting the facts correct. The last thing you want is to be called out in a meeting by one of your colleagues that you're not really, that you didn't really bring your A game and you don't have all the facts correct. So make sure you're coming to that with your A game.
Yeah, absolutely. Next article, CISO needs backing to be effective. Now this is this is one of the LinkedIn posts that I reviewed. We've talked about this before about the CISO isn't really a C-level executive. It led to one of our say easy, do hard segments. What I think this article is trying to do is look, if there's not backing from the CEO and the CFO, and maybe they will now get that backing with some of the new SEC guidance, will the role actually move into an effective leadership role, or won't it?
It's up to us, right? Because if we don't change our ways and start speaking in the language of the business and understanding the business and understanding, what motivates the other business units, what motivates your CFO, what motivates your CEO and the board of directors, we're not going to earn that spot. It's up to us to earn it. And this was the article that I was referring to earlier. We need to be speaking in terms like cash flow, revenue impact, margin impact, customer satisfaction, EBITDA. We need to be speaking the language of the business. Otherwise, we will not earn that seat. We will not be respected enough to know how to move the needle for the overall business, right? Because that's where that C-suite, that C-level executive sits. You want to be in that inner circle. You want to be able to speak to business risk, but we have to earn it.
Yeah, have to earn it. A federal ban on ransomware payments might actually help the CISO. So I missed this news. I don't know where this was announced, but there's been discussions about potentially the White House banning ransomware payments. Now, there was something that came out from, what was it, the FTC or somebody came out with some guidance, or maybe it was the OCC on the banking side. Somebody came out with this guidance before, but it sounds like the White House may take this a little further.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's a move in the right direction. I almost feel like it shouldn't be coined simply just for ransomware, because we are seeing a little bit different approach these days from these cyber criminals about, they're not even deploying ransom anymore. They're just blackmailing because they exfiltrated your data, right? So I hope it's not pigeonholed to just a ransomware attack. I hope it's for any type of payout to a malactor, because I think you could have a benefit, because ultimately what it does is it steps up that responsibility and accountability now to the CEO and CFO, and forces that collaboration with the CISO, because they need to now be managing that risk.
Right, which puts the thesis behind this is it puts the CISO in a better relationship with the CEO and CFO, and not the scapegoat, which they talked about the chief scapegoat officer in this article, right. But it's to be better aligned with them and get a little more, I guess, engaged with the leadership team, which is one of the challenges that we still see with the CISO role.
100%. Yeah, it's gonna force that conversation, force that engagement, and honestly, force the CEO and the CFO to spend time with the CISO. And I think that's where we've been lacking, is that, the CFO and the CEO don't necessarily see value in sitting down with the CISO, simply because they still look at it as a technology problem. And if we can bring our A game to the table and we can be speaking the language of the business, we're going to earn a lot of trust and respect out of these conversations. It's going to force that more intimate relationship to happen, which I think is completely beneficial for us. Let's just not waste it. Let's take advantage of this opportunity.
Right. Absolutely. Next article is on the workforce strategy. See previous segment
That's
for
right.
some great information. There were so many articles on this. I had to just pull one in for people to reference, because it links to the actual 60-page report that was put out from the White House. So if anybody wants to read the strategy document that we talked about on the last segment, it's embedded in this article. You click it, opens up the PDF. I read parts of it. I didn't read the whole thing before the show, but I think it's a good resource for people. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, and just a handful of quick, golden nuggets. Huge investment in K through 12 is going to be needed, so hopefully they're going to put funding there. Federal agencies are going to work deeper with industry and academia, which we talked about in the previous segment, which is great. Skill-based hiring practices was something that was advocated, which I absolutely love. There's going to be a huge role, like we talked about with Dr. Griffiths, about community colleges, kind of bringing in that entry-level skill set, and they're going to play a big part on that. And then, work-based learning capabilities and funding, and then the diversity and inclusion of making sure we're modernizing our hiring practices when it comes to cybersecurity. So great things coming out of this. I hope it's something that gains a lot of traction, and we can really move the needle here.
Yeah, I hope so. It is a passion for you. Like I said, it was such perfect timing to have Dr. Griffiths come on literally a week after this thing was launched to kind of go through the strategy with us. I think a lot of great information came out of that last segment. And look, it behooves us as leaders in the industry, as participants in this industry, what can we do to help, right? She had some really good calls to action for us around volunteering. They need teachers, anybody that's accredited. One of the things we didn't get into on that segment, which I thought was interesting, is it's hard for a small university to keep their accreditation numbers in check because it's all about the percentages. So larger universities can bring in adjunct professors a little more in bulk because it gets kind of weighted differently in a bigger university with a lot more accredited professors. Smaller schools will struggle a bit, but she said still, if you've got the credentials, teach.
That's right. 100%. Teach, volunteer, find advisory boards you can be part of. Just start seeing where you can put a little bit of skin in the game. You don't have to go hog wild all out of the gate. Give a little, right? Just start there. In all honesty, that's how it started for me, and then it just became a passion. And I just, I had trouble saying no to any advisory board committee, any organization that would reach out saying we need help. I felt an obligation to do it. So that's ultimately what happened. It was kind of that snowball effect for me, but give a little if you can.
Yeah, agreed. This next article I love. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but it's okay to fail, but do it right.
Yep.
And it's such a very interesting topic right now. When we think about the economy that we're in, we think about the environment we're in, we think about what everybody wants to do with these things called AI, and like people, we're going to fail, like implementing this stuff, our expectations around this technology, like there's so many things, right? And so I'm going through the notes, and the one section I kind of gravitated towards in here, and I want to hear your thoughts in a second, Jason, is this concept of smart experiments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where
yep.
you kind of know what you should do, and you should test it out and validate it quickly and decide whether it's something you should continue on. Because we're having this discussion right now with generative AI and what things can we do with generative AI and what things shouldn't we do with generative AI, right? And let's iterate on that fast and determine that so we can throw away the things that aren't going to work and really only focus on the things that will work, because as leaders, that'll make us more efficient and from a productivity perspective will help us.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I mean, if we're not testing and failing and really beating up these initiatives that we want to put forward, we're going to stifle innovation, right? And at the end of it, we need to create, as employers and as leaders, we need to create environments and cultures where it's safe to fail, it's okay to fail. You won't be chastised if you fail. You actually want to have safe environments to fail, so that way you can have these proof of concepts and R&D departments and really push the limits of these technologies to see how it fits your organization, how it can help change your organization, and maybe at the end of the day help build some intellectual property for your company, right? I mean, it's this experimenting has to happen, right? There's a danger of complacency if you don't experiment. So we are accountable and responsible as leaders to set up these safe environments and safe cultures to really say it's okay to fail. We want you to be pushing the limit because we want to innovate, and we're creating the safe space for you to be able to do that.
Yeah. The other thing
one of the things I did pull out. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead. No, pull it out.
No, I was just going to say one of the things in this article that is extremely important that you do no matter what. They call it a postmortem. I call it, continuous improvement opportunity. Really go back after the fact and look at what happened, discuss it, even if it was a success or if it was a failure. Go back and look at everything and talk through how it could have been done better, what we did well, did we document correctly? What were the findings coming out of this? Take the time to do that, look back and document it. Because number one, if it did fail, you don't want to repeat that. So you want to know what you did so you don't repeat it again. And secondly, if it's a success, it's always good as a case study, a white paper, and an ability to go out there and celebrate the success of your organization innovating and really testing the limits.
Yeah, and this is where I was going to tie it into our previous segment is in the cyber strategy, things like AI and quantum computing are now getting rolled into this definition. Like we know we don't have enough skill sets around AI or quantum, let alone cybersecurity, right? So I mean, some of the stuff is really interesting. Is we're going to have to try some of these experiences, and we are going to fail because we don't have the expertise yet. Like, this is all emerging things that if we don't have a way to fail fast, learn from those and iterate, you're right, we will stifle innovation because we don't have enough other resources to help us.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Last article for the day. The art of effective communication. It's such a huge topic for me.
Yeah.
I always think about it in how you communicate and present, and it's something that I think is so important for leadership to really understand. I sit back, I even critique my own self at times. I think about what I said, how I said it, how I presented the data. Like, I always try to think about better ways to communicate things. And so I do like these articles because it makes me think about what I do, how I say it.
I love them too. And you and I are cut off the same cloth in some instances because sometimes I'm doing it in real time as I'm speaking. And I'm already, the gears are already spinning saying, ooh, I did that thing I said I didn't want to do. Right. And it's, and then it's really paying attention. So sometimes it's in real time that you're sitting there and you're looking at the way you're speaking and critiquing it and changing on the fly. So yeah, no doubt, and for this, that core piece of active listening and having empathy, I think is a huge part of it. Because if you're not actively listening and you're not taking in the needs of your audience, your employees, your peers, the stakeholders around you, you're not going to be speaking to that audience. You're not going to know how to deliver that communication to the audience. So I think those pieces are crucial and foundational.
Agreed. The one I struggle with the most is the nonverbal communication, the facial expression. When we had Vanessa Van Edwards on from Science of People, I don't think you were on that segment. I think it was me and Paul. She talks about resting bitch face. Like, what's your resting thing? And I think about it all the time. Like, my wife says this to me all the time. She's like, smile. Like, sometimes my natural expression isn't that happy looking. And so this is the one I struggle with the most. Like, I'm always conscious about how do I look facial expression wise when I'm on a call, because that's the hardest one for me of all these that are in this list.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I struggle with that too. I mean, I'm from the Northeast, number one, and I'm Portuguese. So I have my hands in my pocket right now. So my camera won't change focus because I use my hands to speak. Right. So at the end of the day, but knowing your nuances, knowing the things that you do helps you think about it a little bit more and you can work on that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, right now my hands are in my pocket because I know that I speak with my hands and my hands will be waving in front of this camera. And I'm sure there's plenty of episodes where that happens.
Yeah, and then we get the fun little zoom in and out little blur.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly why. So, but yeah, I mean, again, it's just knowing and trying to work on it. Emotional intelligence is another one because that's a great way to be able to read your audience as you're communicating. I mean, it's good intel as well going into it, but having that level of emotional intelligence to be able to pinpoint how folks are reacting to your communication and then pivot on a dime if you have to is very important.
Oh yeah. You have to read your audience. You have to know whether they're engaged, if they understand it or not. Because if you don't understand that, you're not going to be an effective communicator because you don't even realize that they're not hearing you.
That's right. And I think audiences appreciate the fact that you can identify that and say, all right, I'm getting a sense that folks aren't understanding what we're talking about, are understanding and how I'm communicating. Let me take a step back and clarify. Let me take a step back and get you to a point where I can clarify what I'm trying to communicate here. And I think audiences appreciate that big time because if you can sense it and then kind of tether back your conversation a little bit to the audience, you're going to be that much more effective.
Yes. You do not want them to tune out if you're trying to educate them or get a point across.
That's right.
It's not going to work. So
learn
to read your audience, folks. And with that, I'm going to read my audience right now. We're at the top of the hour. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.